beginning a bit of a prayer focus for the church, and that includes Sunday messages, as Pete said. So what I'd like to do to start with is tell you about a conversation I had with a friend a while back. So I saw this friend in the evening and I asked her how her day had gone. She was a Polytech lecturer, and so she told me how the end of her day had gone. She had had some classes that day, and towards the end of the day she did some planning. She was satisfied with her planning, so she felt that's enough for today. So she packed up her bag, turned her computer off, said goodbye to one of her workmates that she shared an office with, closed the door, walked out, and as she walked out along the corridor, she saw another workmate that she had to have a conversation with, so she stopped and arranged an appointment for the following day. Stepped out of the building, got to her car, sat down, turned the key on, and the radio started up. So at this point, she is feeling really satisfied with her day. She feels like this is a day where I've been able to contribute well to others. I'm happy with the work that I have done today. The radio turned on and it had been set to Radio Rema. She's a Christian. And the first thing she heard was somebody talking about the blood of Jesus. And this is how she described it to me. She said she was really interested in the reaction that flared up immediately within her. It was, what on earth has this got to do with me? This is from another planet. It's interesting, isn't it? She's a very strong Christian. She's somebody I have the utmost admiration for. But that was her response on hearing that. And I think what she was sensing was a disconnect between her faith life and her work life. I don't know if any of you have ever felt that. What's your Sunday life got to do with your Monday life? What's what you do here today, this morning? How's that going to relate to 10 past 11 on Tuesday morning with whatever you're doing there? Are they the same world, or are they different worlds for you internally and in terms of your behaviours? This is actually a really big issue, and it's an issue that a lot of people have faced. They've written books about it. So what I want to do this morning is just pick one narrow aspect of this bigger question, which is prayer. So how do you relate prayer, the sorts of prayer we've been doing this morning, to the prayer life on Wednesday at 10 past 3? And how do you get this to work? Pray hard. Prayer in our ordinary everyday lives, so Monday to Saturday spirituality. So that there's corporate prayer, but what I'm focusing on this morning is more individual prayer. This is our topic. And the entry point for us is John 15, chapter 12 to 15, verses 12 to 15, which says this: "My command is this, love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you." These are Incredible words, and as Maddie P says, anything from John is very dense. There's a lot of content, even just in these small number of verses. You've got some stuff there about love and the sacrificial nature of love. You've got some stuff about obedience as a way in which we express our love for God. But within this, you've got the remarkable words, I no longer call you servants. Instead, I have called you friends. I no longer call you servants because a servant doesn't know his master's business. I call you friends because everything that I've learned, I've made known to you. So I call you friends. So there's open communication. This is a friendship where there's a mutual and open communication going on. Friendship with Jesus, love, communication. This passage, for me, pushes us towards faith as relationship. In this passage, we're not, and remember, the Bible's a multi-layered thing too. So there's a whole range of images of our relationship with God and Jesus, and this is one of them. So what I like about this particular image is that we're not a servant approaching a master. We are respectful friends in close communication. Oh, I mean, that's a wonderful image, and it's an image that I've hung on to because I found it quite liberating as I think about prayer. For so long, I treated prayer as a task, something to be done, and this is the way I was taught to pray. It's something that that is done. It's you're a servant approaching the master with a series of requests. The way I was taught to pray was using the acronym ACTS: adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication, or in the way in which I taught it to my children. This is not very responsive. You are, sorry, and thank you and please. So I'd sit down in the morning, I'd read my Bible, and then I'd go through these steps. You are God. Thank you for what you've done. Sorry for what I've done, and please would you do these things? And maybe have a bit of time of listening. And then I would have finished my prayer. So I'd close my Bible, I'd get up and get on with the rest of my day. And my mind would have done the prayer part. And then I get up and start doing the rest of my day. And the risk with this way of, and look, I'm not saying this isn't a good way to pray. I think it is a good way to pray. But it's not the only way to pray. At the very least, when I pray that way, there's a real sense of grounding your day in God right at the beginning of the day. So I think there's a real benefit in doing this. But the risk is, if this is the only way that you pray, is that your work life and your prayer life become atomized. They become put in separate boxes. So you've got the prayer stuff, which is in a prayer box. And you get up and you do it in the morning, and you've done that, you've ticked the box, and then you tick the box for that box. And then you get up and you step into the next box. And there's not necessarily that much relationship between them. It's an atomized approach to life and faith. And look, if you think this is an exaggeration, it's been my experience personally. But also, if you think this is an exaggeration, look, I've worked with too many Christians in the workplace whose behaviours and values and attitudes are appalling. These are people who I know are faithful, devoted Christians, yet in the workplace, their behaviours and attitudes are worse often than the non-Christians around them. And it's shocking. And for me, this can only happen if they're inhabiting two separate boxes. If they're inhabiting a Sunday faith box, and that puts on a certain mantle of behaviours, and then they step into the workplace, and they've got the workplace, and they absorb the stuff in the workplace, but it's like there's two parts of their lives that have virtually no connection. That's the problem. It's a real issue. And I think seeing prayer just as task can lead us to this. So if we think about prayer as task, it's a box you tick it. But if you think about prayer as relationship, things change. Because if prayer is relationship, relationship carries with you through the day. So prayer as relationship overflows out of the box. It can't be contained within a box. Relationship is with you the whole day. It's with you everywhere. I think of it like this. Jesus is like a friend. He's a friend who's with me all the time, wherever I go. And he wants to be in relationship with me all the time, wherever I go. I can see people nodding. So this way of me praying is not so much making sure that Jesus is there with me. It's this way of praying is training myself to continually recognise the reality of what is. It's a way of recognising and acknowledging the presence of Jesus with me every moment of every day. And that's what the prayer practice is. I wonder if this is what Paul actually meant in 1 Thessalonians when he wrote about pray without ceasing. I don't think he was meaning form fully fledged sentences of requests to God continuously right through the day. I wonder if it's prayer as relationship, God with me, acknowledging it. Many of you'll know the story of Brother Lawrence, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. Brother Lawrence was a 17th century French monk. And monks spend a chunk of time praying, but they spend a chunk of time doing practical work. So for Brother Lawrence, his work was in the kitchen, really exciting. He'd scrub the pots, he'd peel the potatoes, he'd chop up the onions for large numbers of hours each day. And for him, while he was doing that, he consciously worked on being aware of the presence of God in these tasks. For him, it was like he was training for a marathon. He was intentional and he was dedicated. So it was a determined, persistent practice of the presence of God. He trained himself to, and this is the phrase that has come from Brother Lawrence, practice the presence of God. He actually put his thoughts down in a devotional book that's become a classic that you can get on the internet. And he reached the point where he said, the time for me, the time of busyness does not with me differ from the time of prayer. In the noise and clutter of my kitchen, I possess God in as great tranquility as if I were on my knees in the blessed sacrament. Practicing the presence of God. That's incredible, isn't it? I find this quite inspiring. find this motivational, and this has been something that has motivated me to try to live this way. But I mean, let's be real. He was living in a religious community. It would be a lot easier for him. 17th century, a lot less distractions. I mean, is this really realistic when you've got kids running around bashing each other and screaming their lungs out? Or when the phone rings incessantly, or deadlines are too short, or the building contractors don't turn up when they're meant to. Or you've got a workmate who's nearby with foul language and a bad attitude, or classmates annoying you at school. Is it realistic to practice the presence of God in our modern life? Or our phones keep ringing all the time? Do you think that's realistic? Well, I think it is. And I just like to get a little bit practical at this point, because there are some things that I've tried that have helped me. And the first one is this. In my wallet, I have a card, and it says this. Are you bringing those up? We'll wait till I nod. Please. It says this, and you can read it. Right now, God, I am doing whatever I'm doing, and this is the moment to enjoy your company. Right now, God, I'm standing in front of these people, and this is the moment to enjoy your company. So it could be in my wallet, and I see it when it's in my wallet, or it's laminated, so often it's in my pocket. So I'm standing in the lift on the way to work, and it's a lot easier for men than women to do this. You put your hands in your pocket and you feel something there, and it's just a reminder. And the phrase comes to you, right now, God, I'm standing in this lift, and this is the moment to enjoy your company. I have found this really helpful, and I'm going to come back to this. So the next one, using a physical object. So for a while I had a large bone carving of a cross. I've lost it. I went looking for it this morning and couldn't find it. But it was large and bulky, and I'm not used to wearing things around my neck. And I could feel it, so I would wear it 2 or 3 times a week. And every time during the working day I felt it there, I'd just touch it. Who am I? I'm a sinner, redeemed by Christ, a child of God. And so just touching it, the phrase runs through my head, and I just acknowledge the presence of God with me and acknowledge God and whatever was happening around me right in that moment. A variation on that I've used is to use a stone or some other physical object. Yeah, some other people have tried this. A stone in your pocket, which is a bit annoying, but it's a reminder. Something there, you just got to vary it, because if it's there too often, you forget it's there. These are prompts. Somebody told me last week that if you want to develop good habits in your life, you need 3 things. You need motivation, an ability, and a prompt. Look, to acknowledge the presence of God in your day, all of us have the motivation for that already. All of us have the ability to pray. All of us, you know. There's nothing special about that. If you can breathe, you can pray. What we need is a prompt to remind us to do these things. So these are prompts. And the third one is, thanks, hourly reminders. This one wasn't quite so successful when I was doing it. It was, you know, your watch has had a beep. You can set it to beep every hour. So right through my working day, my watch would beep. And once an hour, at least once an hour, I'd be reminded Christ is with me, right next to me, engaged in everything that's going on. The problem is that everybody else around me can hear the beep as well, and got a bit annoying for them. So I stopped doing it after a while. But it's occurred to me this week that you could actually start doing it again just with silent buzzing on your phone. if your phone's in your pocket. So these are prompts for us in our ordinary working days. Do you want to bring the next slide up? This one in particular is the one that I've kept coming back to. It's just such a powerful. It's such a powerful thing, and it can work in a range of ways. You can be talking with somebody, you can be engaged in deep conversation. Put your hand in your pocket, and while you're in conversation, there's another part of your brain can be saying, right now, God, I'm talking to this person. This is a difficult conversation. Thank you so much that you're here with me. And it's interesting what happens when you do this. Right now, God, you're here with me. When I say that, I find myself smiling. Something happens to me physically. God, you're right here with me. I smile. And as soon as you smile, that actually changes the nature of the conversation you're having. You're now smiling at that person. You're engaging them with them differently. Just saying that prayer changes your engagement with the person. Also, in a part of your brain while you're having that conversation, you can just tune into God. God, is there something you have for me to say to this person? What's going on here? Help me to understand. It's totally possible for those two things to be happening at once. Or it may be that you're just looking out the window. Thank you, God, that this is a fantastic view and that I can enjoy it with you. So, look, I really commend these things to you. I'm sure many of you do this sort of thing already. You've got your own ways of doing prompts. I've had these ways of doing prompts, but really, look, I'm preaching to myself here, because what I realised when Pete asked me to preach and I started to prepare this message, I said I've got out of the habit. I got out of the habit of practicing the presence of God. It's easy to do. So I'm preaching to myself. So lately, since Pete asked me to preach, I've been painting the house, staining the deck, going, right now, God, I'm painting the house. And now is the moment to enjoy your presence. I'd like to finish just by doing two things. First of all, just read a psalm by Joy Cowley. God of washing, God of unmade beds, God of dented saucepans and worn-out brooms, your presence in the most ordinary things often takes me by surprise. I listen to the morning news and think of your presence at the United Nations Peace Conference, at the launching of a space probe, at the development of a vaccine, at the discovery of a new planet. Then I look down and see you winking in bubbles of detergent. God of washing, God of stains and missing buttons. Wherever else you might be, you are right here with me, defrosting and cleaning the freezer, picking up bits of plastic toys from the living room floor, and each time you nudge my heart with the warmth of your presence, recognition leaps like a song. I know it. Oh, I know it. God of washing, God of vacuum cleaner bags, God of sparrows, lilies and mustard seeds. My house is your tabernacle. And finally, a story that's retold by Philip Yancey in one of his books. It's the story of a hand surgeon who specialises in attaching fingers which have been cut off in accidents. And these were long, difficult operations, 6 to 8 hours, fine work attaching fine nerves and tendons and blood vessels. And one night, This man was called to an emergency operation. He was woken up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and he had such an attitude. He didn't want to go in. He just wanted to carry on sleeping. He didn't want to go in and do this difficult long operation. To motivate himself, he decided to dedicate the operation to his father, who had died recently. And for the next few hours, he imagined his father next to him with his hand on his shoulder, offering encouragement. And this was so successful that he decided to do that every time he did an operation. And then it dawned on him, shouldn't he be doing the same thing with God, his Father? Except the difference is that it's not a matter of imagining that God, his Father, was with him, next to him, hand on his shoulder offering encouragement. It's a matter of recognizing that he was there anyway. For each of us, God's right there, with us, next to us, offering us encouragement, hand on our shoulders, every moment of every day. Right now, God, I'm talking to these people, and now's the moment to enjoy your company. Amen.
Let's stand, shall we?